raise our kids.
What happens and what changes when you decide I'm not going to leave? That's off the table.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple. Nobody calls anymore, right?
Yeah.
Welcome to the broadcast. This is Michael Easley in Context, albeit a little different set today. I've got two ornery old pastors with me.
Who are you talking about?
Old farts.
We're all old ornery pastors. Dr. Tim Harlow has retired senior pastor from Parkview Christian Church in Orland Park, Illinois. He served as senior pastor of Parkview Christian from 1990 until retiring in 2023. They first went to that church with 150 folks, and when they left, over 10,000 members across multi-site campuses. In 1984, Tim met Denise at Ozark Christian College. They have been lifelong partners in ministry ever since. They have 3 daughters, 3 sons-in-law, and 8 grandchildren. And I love the name of your last grandchild being Harlow.
I know, it's cool.
Because my youngest grandchild is a little girl named Easley.
I know that. It's so good.
Pretty sweet. Tim is the
You're
author
going to have
of...
a Glenn?
All my grandkids are Glenn.
There's that. There's that.
George Foreman, right?
There is that. I got to get to the introductions. Come on, guys. Okay. All right. Tim's written a couple of books, Life on Mission, God's People Finding God's Heart for the World, and What Made Jesus Mad. You know, he sent us that book, the What Made Jesus Mad book.
Right.
Yeah. Rediscovering the blunt, sarcastic, passionate Savior of the Bible. Dr. Mike Glenn, to my left, your right, is the president of Engage Church Network. It focuses on working with pastors and churches to allow them to fully express their mission to their neighborhoods, novel idea, and community. He has been a pastor for over 45 years, recently stepped down as the senior pastor of the first big church, of Brentwood Baptist Church, 8 campuses, 32 years. You've helped about, 40 churches in your Middle Tennessee initiative? Over 40 churches where you've revitalized a smaller community, dying churches in some respects, and turned those into incredible ministries. Mike is married to Jeannie. They have 2 grandsons, 2 daughters-in-law, and 4 grandchildren. You're the author of 3 books, In Real Time, The Gospel of Yes, Coffee with Mom, Caring for a Parent with Dementia, and he's written hundreds of articles in home life and different online things, writes a blog currently. He's also Michael Easley's best friend, having saved him in numerous scrapes and bailed him out of jail on several occasions. That's what your bio said.
That's what it said. I thought he was going to add that to both of ours.
That's right, yeah. I'm there for you, Easley.
Well, I have to tell the short story. When I first moved here in December of 2008, you were the first pastor in town to reach out to me. Mm-hmm. He picked me up in his Cadillac and took me to Maribel's for lunch.
Ooh, love Maribel's.
Yeah, you did. You were very kind to this newcomer. And at different transition periods, you've picked me up in your car and taken me a certain place.
Yeah.
But you know what? He did the same thing for me.
Yeah.
I mean, relocating down here, one of the first guys, you guys both such good friends, but you got a great ministry for that. It's like, hey, how you doing? Let's, it's Brick Tops now. Let's go to Brick Tops and check in on things. And of course, all 3 of us are kind of going through this, this whole deal together. And man, I sure love it.
Well, welcome to Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike beat us all here. I've been here, I guess this is our 17th year. And it's been, in our 44 years of marriage, this is the longest place we have lived. You've been here how many years total in Middle Tennessee?
32.
32. And now how many months?
Full time, it's been a little over a year.
Well, welcome.
Yeah.
So the idea of this discussion format came from these 2 guys, about the 3 of us old ornery guys, kicking around some ideas, things we've learned, having some fun together. And I thought we would just do a couple of programs to see what you think. And if you know Mike and his ministry and his blogs and his YouTube channel, if you know Tim, it might be a good cross-pollination to see what y'all think. Let us know, because we'll do a couple of programs here, and we'd love to get your feedback. But I thought we'd start off with each of you. I guess you had a call to ministry of some kind. Could you give us a brief synopsis of? I'll go with you first. What does a call to ministry mean for you?
I always knew. I always knew that I was going to end up doing
So how
something.
old was always? Like 10, 12?
No, as far back as I can remembering.
Interesting.
No kidding.
I knew I was called.
What does it mean you were called?
I was going to do something in the church or ministry or missions, and you go through the whole thing of finding out what you're gifted at. It's everything from missionaries to professors to that kind of thing, and then you end up being the pastor of a local church, and it's like, well, okay. So, but I've never doubted the call. I have never
You doubted the place a couple of times.
Yeah. And I've never doubted. I've always known Jesus has always been very real to me. I've never had a crisis of faith. My thing was I just didn't fit. There was a
We were meaning to talk to you about this.
A mold that I was supposed to fit in, and I never fit in that mold.
What church were you raised in?
I was raised in a little church, Huntsville Park Baptist Church in Huntsville, Alabama.
So
it's
Baptist.
It's the mill. The mill owner and the mill worker never go to the same church. Right?
Okay.
This was the mill worker church.
Okay.
And, salt of the earth folks,
Yeah.
and they loved me. And they were the ones who would walk up to me and go, pay attention to your life, boy.
Interesting.
God's doing something with you. And, long before I was ever given word to it.
Yeah.
Now,
some of
your
those folks
mom
were.
and dad, were they supportive of the idea of
Oh,
you being called?
gosh, yeah. Mom was a pianist in the church. And the background, if we ever did a movie of my life, the whole soundtrack would be my mom on the piano playing hymns. That would be the soundtrack of my life. My dad taught Sunday school for 40 years. And I learned to love Scripture from watching my dad get ready every Saturday night to teach a Sunday school lesson.
Wow.
In fact, I have the table he studied at.
Really?
That was one of the things that I took out of the house.
That's fantastic. Man.
Open Bible, Sunday school quarterly, pen. And when he'd find something, he'd run in and tell me, "Look what I found! Look what I found!"
Really?
Then he'd run back down and go, "Oh, have you seen this, son?" And so that's where I learned to love Scripture.
good.
I got him a new Bible. His Bible was literally falling apart.
Yeah.
You had to square it up
Yeah.
before you picked it up. Those kind of Bibles. I got him a new one, so I went back home and he was
He
not
never looked at it.
never used the new one. And I pulled him aside. I said, "Daddy, what's wrong with the Bible?" And he said, "Son, that new Bible doesn't know anything."
Now, you mentioned your mom playing piano.
Oh,
and
yeah.
When you were still at Brentwood Baptist,
Right.
she would sneak in there and play the.
Oh yeah, I would bring her up to the church and she'd play the piano there in the sanctuary.
And the staff would come out.
And the staff would come. They'd find out she was playing. They'd come. And I tell you, one of the holiest moments of my life, she was playing on the piano, and I was sitting there watching her, and she was playing "Pass Me Not, O Gentle Savior." And I was watching her, and it hit me. Oh, my word, Mama is praying. She had lost everything. The one thing she had not lost is her music. She never lost the ability to play the piano.
Mm-hmm.
And here she was. Here I am in a life I don't want, in a place I don't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never hear that song again without just...
A good time to talk about your book, Coffee with Mom, and we kind of lived with, your stories where
Right.
you would go visit her and she had dementia. And by the way, in the show notes of the program, we'll have these guys' bios and books. But tell folks a little bit about that book, because there's a lot of humor in there and a lot of heartbreak in there.
Right. My dad, before he died, kept telling me, "I'm worried about your mom." And I kept blowing it off because I thought whatever Mom was dealing with was because she was spending 24/7 taking care of my dad. My dad had congestive heart failure. And so I didn't pay attention to it. Well, after Dad died, it became pretty apparent pretty quick that there's something wrong with Mom. We ended up moving her up here against her will. Mm-hmm. If you go down I-65 right now between Nashville and Huntsville, there's two ruts where I dragged my mother up here
Memorial Highway.
for 4 years. It was amazing. And I would go, the place where she ended up was on the way to the church, and I'd stop and have coffee with her every morning. And she
Every morning?
Just about every morning. And she would say some of the most outrageous things. And I would put them out on Twitter. Hey, my mom said, Things like, because I wore jeans, you would say you dress like a field hand, but, your father and I worked so hard and you dress like a field hand. And so it was, our group that said, you got to put this in a book. They would text me, go, your mom did not say that. Yes, she did.
Yeah. And it's a great read, man. I love it.
So, you love your mom. You want to do right by your mom. My dad, I used to tell people, I'm the only guy who's going to have 2 votes getting to heaven. Jesus would say, well done. My dad was going to step up and go, hold on. I gave the boy specific instructions. I need to check with him before we let him in here. So,
Tim, what about your call to ministry?
Probably earliest memory. My dad was a pastor, first generation. It wasn't handed down, but dad was a pastor, and probably all the way through. Church camp. All those kinds of things. Definitive moment when I look back on it. When I get to meet Michael McDonald or one of the Doobie Brothers someday, is in the back seat of a Mustang on the way to high school, and the Doobie Brothers song "Jesus Is Just All Right With Me" came on, and it was the first time I heard it. I don't know, what would that been, 76, 77, something like that. And I had this thought, and I think it was a vision. I had this thought that if I could, I didn't play any instruments, but I had a bass guitar that I got from Sears and Roebuck, and I thought if I could get a band together and play "Jesus Is Just All Right With Me" at church, I could invite the rest of the guys in this car that are on their way to school with me, and they would actually come. Mm-hmm. And I knew that, they were never going to come to the church that we presented in that moment, at that place. Not my dad's fault. It was just the way things were. And, and I don't know what happened to him, but it was just a call for me to start looking at Scripture and go, okay, Jesus was always around the Mustang guys. He was always around those guys, and feels like church isn't the same. And so, didn't think I was going to go into ministry, went to Bible college anyway. God called us in, but and married a woman who grew up in ministry, and she knew it was right for me, and I knew it was right for her, and it was just a marriage made for that. But the second big definitive call was when we got called to go to Chicago, because we weren't from there. We're Southerners. I'm from Oklahoma. She's from Missouri, and we were in St. Louis at the time and loving it, and didn't have any inclination of being in Chicago, as you well know. Wasn't on our bucket list, right? And we went and visited this little church, and I knew there was turmoil. I knew it was trouble. I knew it was going to be hard. And we just both broke down and wept and knew God had called us to that place. And 33 years later, felt like God had released us from that. Literally an experience on Mount Nebo. Have I told you this story?
You sent us the video.
Oh yeah, that's right. I sent you guys. I mean, it was the most charismatic Pentecostal moment I've had on Mount Nebo, and realizing that God was saying is okay. You're not going on into the promised land. You're gonna go to a better place, and the better place, of course, is Nashville, Tennessee.
I'm just glad it wasn't. I keep forgetting we're not in love anymore.
There's so many others it could have been. But what were they smoking when they wrote that song? I mean, come on.
Well, they're named after marijuana.
I know. That's my point.
That'll give you a clue.
That's my point.
Yeah, Doobie Brothers. Okay, how did Denise respond? How did your wives respond to this idea of a call?
Well, I was in seminary, so Jeannie knew.
Were you married
at
the time?
I met Jeannie. Jeannie came up to see her brother, who I knew at seminary. He and I were friends.
And you're at Louisville.
In Southern. And he said, my sister's coming in from out of town. He said, you want to go to dinner? I said, no. No, I don't.
I can read through that one.
Yeah, I said, no, I've been enough that, buddy. I'm gone. So I went to a movie with another friend of mine and got up, and Mark and his wife and Jeannie
And you saw Jeannie and said, "What was I thinking?
What in the world?" And then on the way out, he said, "You sure you can't come over?" I said, Mark,
My plans have changed.
I got a little slack in my schedule. I didn't think I was going to have.
Opened up a window. So you're in seminary. She knows you're in seminary, and so it's like foregone conclusion if I hang out with this guy.
Yeah, this is where we're going to be.
Did she have any reservations?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, every day.
Before you were married.
Oh, yeah. Talking about ministry, not about
we all not about you.
Oh, yeah.
Before, I'm going to be a pastor's wife.
Yeah. Well, like most pastors' wives, she was constantly frustrated by what people said and how they treat you. They get defensive. And,
no.
Everybody thinks Jeannie's sweet and nice, but man, she's...
We've heard stories.
Yeah.
How about Denise?
It was, we were in Bible college. That's where we met. Her brother and I were good friends, still are good friends. And she came to Bible college. And you got to understand, Ozark Christian College in Joplin, Missouri, at the time, maybe 800 students, and most of them are guys that are training for ministry.
Right.
So, when a hot girl shows up, it's, So I waited till I was a senior, and when the freshman hot girl showed up, but she grew up in a ministry family, and like I kind of said earlier, one of the things we saw in each other was not just that attraction, but also that, man, this could be a great ministry partnership, and it hurts me on behalf of people that don't start off that way, because ministry's hard. And a lot of times there's a lady that wants to work for God and her husband does, or vice versa or whatever, and it is tricky. We've had a tricky marriage. It hasn't been wonderful all the time, but the one thing we always knew was that we were going to serve God together. Right. So it was a huge advantage.
So you're finished schooling, you're both in ministry, your first decade. What's that like? Maybe some seminal events in that first decade that kind of reframed your view of ministry, Mike?
Gosh, I went coast to coast on mine. First, I was fired from my first church.
How long had you been there?
Less than a year. And I had a deacon who was growing marijuana.
Doobie Brothers, most
Doobie Brothers
to carry this thing.
There's a theme developing here.
Yeah, I think so.
And when that became known to the little church, they split along family lines, and I fell through the middle. That's kind of what happens. And a church in South Carolina, Edgefield, South Carolina, a church I did not know I had any contact with, ended up calling me as pastor. And the chair of the deacon sat down. He said, "Now you need to know why we're calling you." I said, "Okay." He said, "Our job as a church is to find young preachers and make them good pastors."
Interesting.
And he says, "It takes us about 4 years with most guys."
Wow.
Hendrick said to us in Dallas, he said, it'll take you 5 years to get seminary out of your system.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And if you look back on the First Baptist Church Edgefield, about every 4 years.
At least you're not Methodist every two.
Every two, yeah. But they would come. And the great thing about Edgefield, and they will always be deep within my heart for it, is when you messed up, they would laugh at you. They would just.
You're going to be all right. You're a young pastor.
They would howl at you. They would make more fun of you, and then kind of, "You're not going to do that again, are you?" yeah. We're going to be telling our friends about this, but no, you're not going to do that again, are you? No, sir. No,
we
sir.
wanted to be at the cafeteria at 11:45, and you got us out at 12.
Right, yeah.
I heard that more than once.
So, but Edgefield is right across the river from Augusta, Georgia. And Master Sunday, they tell you, listen,
nobody's going to be here.
They tee off. The leaders tee off at 1. We need to be out here. Little Jesus loves us, and we got to go.
Yeah.
No long altar call on those days.
No, not today. Nobody's getting saved today. We're going home.
So again, to reframe, in that first decade, were there some seminal things you learned that maybe maybe you're not going to do that again, or maybe that set a course for your thinking in ministry?
One of the reasons I went into the ministry, felt called. I love to preach. I love to study the Word and then get excited. That is, that has limited effect if you don't know your congregation, if you don't love your congregation. And Edgefield was the one that taught me, listen, study in the morning, walk around the community in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And both are sermon research. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Both. All the conversations you have in the afternoons should impact what you say on Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones who taught me how to do that. It was for Jeannie. We were sitting with an old pastor and his wife. And Jeannie was saying about, I can't find my place and all that. And that dear saint patted Jeannie on the arm, and the pastor's wife said, "Now, baby, you do know that you and I do something nobody else in the church can do." And Jeannie said, "What's that?" She said, "We take care of their pastor." He said, "If anybody says anything to you, you just smile and say, I'm taking care of your pastor."
It's an interesting point you bring up, old school perhaps, but the expectations laid on the pastor's wife. And I remember first and second church we served, Cindy, she learned, and she said, "My primary job is taking care of Michael and my family.
That's it.
And there'll be room for ministry, but I'm not going to say on the front end, I digress a little bit. First decade, what were kind of, seminal things you learned or reframed?
Well, being at a conservative Christian college and learning the Bible, as a non-conservative, non-traditional kind of a guy, I was always frustrated with the legalism. And that's part of the, what made Jesus mad. I was always frustrated with that. Always wondered why we couldn't do the Doobie Brothers in church, if it was the right song. And, so that was frustrating for me. And then summer before my senior year, I did an summer internship, which usually isn't very helpful, but I got to go to Eastside Christian Church in Fullerton, California, where a guy named Ben Merrill was, and it was among our group of churches. It was one of the most influential churches, and it was running 3,000 or 4,000 out in Southern California, and it just gave me. So this is before my senior year. Gave me a vision for how you could reach people that were far from Christ. Because I'm from Oklahoma. I'm in Southern Missouri. Everybody's a Christian, right? So I get to California and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Some of these people are really not even Christians, and they don't care, and they don't want to be. And I kind of like those people. And I want to hang out. I want to help them, I want to help them find Jesus, the real Jesus. And so that gave me the vision for it. So then we went to Amarillo, Texas, and and did a youth ministry for 3.5 years. And so I went right out of Bible college and then I went to Wayland Baptist University to get my MA while I was doing that. And then we went to St. Louis for 3.5 years to be a youth pastor. So as I was getting out of Bible college and as I was starting through my seminary experience, I was doing ministry at the same time. I took it a little differently. I didn't get my doctorate until 15 years into doing ministry, honestly. And so I did it a little different way, but I went into youth ministry because I loved kids and it was fun and I wanted to have fun. And along the way, started preaching. I'd get the Sunday night preaching gig,
Right.
And that's what gave me
and the Sunday between Christmas and New Year's.
4th of July, Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend.
Right. I got all those.
Spring break weekend.
And that started giving me the call to go do it. And so that's when 7 years in, we ended up with the call to Chicago. So when I went to Chicago, it was a small, dysfunctional church, and I had no preaching experience, and I was 28 years old. So, it was a match made in heaven, and so most of what I learned about the pastoral side of it came from working with a couple of really good mentors that I, worked for along the way. I had family. I had an uncle that was at a church in Amarillo, Texas, and I had my dad, all the way through and all that kind of stuff. But the definitive moments were little moments along the way until that October of 1989 when we felt called. And then, if you're going to go 10 years, that left the first 3 years at Parkview, which were just basically hell. It was just two groups of people that didn't like each other, and they were fighting against each other. And I was trying to,
middle.
I was trying to, it was the same thing. I was trying to bring it together, but I'm really hard headed. And, by that time, then I'd started outlasting some of them. And it took us a good 7 to 10 years to really get the transition done.
Wow.
And then once the transition happened, God just lifted the lid off the place, and it was incredible.
So in that 7 to 10 years, and the question for both of you, go with Tim first, and you can think about it a little bit. We talk about decision-making in the will of God. We talk about how you make a decision. How did you decide for 7 to 10 years to fight the fight versus, okay, this is enough pressure, they probably need someone else.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm grist for the mill. Because all of us have talked to pastors or young guys that are thinking about it, and they hit that first wall, which is typically 18 to 24 months.
Yeah.
And they think, okay, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. And so how do you figure out, okay, this is the pressure point I stay with, or, okay, this is one God's telling me it's time to move on?
That's a great question, Michael, because I think, you talk about the church sending you on every 4 years down there. I moved every 4 years, every 4 or 5 years. We were Oklahoma, we went to Denver, Colorado for 5 years. And
you graduated every 4 years.
Exactly.
And that.
Walk across stage and shake somebody's head.
My alma mater.
So one of the things that was important to us, and of course our kids were little in those early years. I only had the one, and 2 more were born during that early time. But we really felt the call to be there. And I'm not over glorifying, the call and how you figure all that out. We felt the call to be there, and we also really loved some of the people that were there, and they had the right vision. And the ones that didn't, we were able to outlast that. But I bring up the moving thing because then once we got to that 7 to 10 year mark, that's when we said, we're not moving our girls. We want our girls to be here, and so we're going to live this out. And it was a great experience raising them all in the same church all the way through, in a great youth program, and even in the south suburbs of Chicago. I know you hear what you hear about Chicago, but it was a great place to raise your kids.
What happens and what changes when you decide I'm not going to leave? That's off the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty simple. Nobody calls anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
they only call when you're happy in ministry.
Exactly.
They never call when you're looking for a way
That's
out.
exactly right. No, that's exactly right. And they don't call, and if you're not looking around, I mean, you can liken it to marriage. You can liken it to anything you want to. But when you decide you're supposed to be there and you're going to be there, all the other options just don't look as good. And to be honest, probably didn't have anybody that was really, I probably didn't have a good church call me at the right time because,
but we can also put ourselves out there in the sense that,
you're right.
There's no classified, so to speak.
No.
Yeah.
But you can also start praying, and you can network with seminary and your friend.
No,
Hey,
you can drop
on
a
the
few
QT,
hands.
I did that.
I'm
I did that a
thinking-
couple of times. I did that a couple of times, and nothing happened.
How about you? When you think of a fulcrum between, do I fight this fight? Do I stay here, or is it time for me to move?
The beginning at Brentwood was less than stellar. A couple of things. One, I had a staff member caught in an affair, and I hadn't been there long enough for the church to trust me. They didn't really know who I was yet. And so the church panicked, and I don't this thing blows up, and you're not sure you have a leader.
Yeah.
So in that, I can remember on my back porch when I was in a prayer time, and I was telling Jesus he made a serious mistake here, and he should have thought better about this. Yeah. One of those prayer times you have, and it came to me. You're going to be David to somebody else's Solomon. You're going to be the one who gets this thing fixed and gets everything ready. The next guy is going to have a great church, and nobody will ever know that you're the one who. Yeah. But that's all right. I'm kind of wired that way anyway. But you're going to do the right thing,
and you're going to have to shed some blood.
And but when the church moves to its future, you're going to be too bloody to move on. So that was kind of the decision I made.
Same thing, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah,
that David and Solomon illustration.
I'm going to be David or somebody else's Solomon, and I'm going to do the right thing regardless of what it costs. What I didn't realize at the time is that the real leaders of the church hadn't made their mind up yet. They were sitting in the pew. Yeah. They were sitting in the bleachers watching.
Mm-hmm. Now, how's he going to deal with it?
You had all these yappers that come to you. The people that meet you at the train station.
Interrupt for a second. I've told that 1,000 times. Beware the wagon that meets the train.
That's exactly right.
When it comes to the pastor.
Because
beware the wagon that meets the train.
They got a whole other agenda. Yeah. But the true leaders, the elders of that church, that everybody were watching,
and they know, they can smell it.
And when they saw me doing the right thing, they said, "All right, we'll back this guy." And that was when it changed.
I heard Rick Warren many, many years ago, before he was globally famous. They had these little spiral notebooks. It was $35, and it was called like the baseball diamond plan for your church or something.
I got it.
Fill in the blank, And he made the comment that the average pastor leaves his church over 6 or 7 people.
Yeah. I wouldn't doubt that. Yeah.
And I was going through the Rolodex going, yep. There are always 6 or 7 that kind of test your sanctification.
I don't know. In that Piranha Bowl, I was in there for a little while.
It seemed like
they were tag teaming. They were tag teaming. Yeah. Okay, I'm tired. I'm out, Coach. At some point, you do decide to move from not Brentwood's location, but from a church to Brentwood Baptist. At some point, you decide to move. 2 or 3 indices that said, "Okay, it's time."
I can't even talk about it. I mean,
is this like cone of silence?
No. Well, it's not. It's not anymore.
Oh, okay.
So in that St. Louis situation, I mean, if you want to know what a numbskull I am, this is the length to which God had to go to get me to go to Chicago. I go to visit this church. We feel called. We do not really want to go there. I go back home. My senior pastor has been arrested the next week. And I won't go into the details, but he's instantly going to be gone.
Whoa.
I am like, holy cow, what's supposed to happen? Maybe I need...
You just got promoted.
Well, maybe I just got promoed, but maybe I didn't. Who wants it? And what I figured out was the church thought that they thought they were good enough that they were going to go out and get somebody else, some hotshot. They didn't need the 28-year-old youth pastor guy. They could go get somebody else and bring him in. And I quickly ascertained that, no matter what, I didn't want to start this all over again. So I was called and pushed at the same time. Yeah. And,
your ships were burned, man.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
How about you, Mike?
Brentwood was just so creative, and there was just so much energy in Nashville and in that church.
So it was more compelling and enticing, and I want to be part of this.
I want to be part of this. Oh, there's going to be some good. There's going to be some great things happen here. I want to be part of
that. That's good.
I had a guy years ago, a consultant, and he's actually from the Christian church background, and he taught me the ABCs and the MBA of churches. He said the ABC is attendance, building, cash. that we look at attendance, we look at the building programs and the cash, and that gives you a health index of a kind.
Sure.
And then he gave me the MBA, which he called Money, Vision, Power. And he said in every church, there are one or more people that control money, vision, power. Mm-hmm. And I was going from a smaller church in Texas to a larger church in Virginia, D.C. And I said, well, how do you find out this money, vision, power thing? And he said, ask. And so we had a large staff at that church. I think I had 12 pastors on staff when I went up there.
Oh, wow.
And I had a 45-minute interview with each one of them. I was there for a week. And so I had a clipboard with the 12 questions. The last 3 questions, who controls the money, who controls the vision, who controls the power? Every one of them said the same person for the same thing. Even the guy who controlled the power said, probably me. I'm talking about numbskull. And I was like, okay. So when I talk about ABCs and, the MBA, and I would share this in pastors' workshops going, we are averse to attendance, building, and cash, but that tells you something.
Yeah, you got to measure
Because if you
something.
don't have people, you don't have facility, and you don't have cash, to put a better word, health might be the word.
Yeah.
But the MBA thing really blew me away, and I found that true even 44 years later, looking back. The guy that controls the purse, the power, the vision is the guy that drives the train. All that kind of comment. What have you learned along those lines about either the churches you were in, or in my situation, in a sanctified way, trying to wrestle away some of the control from the wrong areas to where, to me, a pastor ought to control the vision, and then money and power might flow. You control the power, you have a domineering leader. You control the money, fill in the blank. But even those they fail at a lot of levels. But I'm prattled a bit, so kind of get your reaction response to those. The ABCs, the MBA of the church. What did you see? What did you learn that substantiate things you experienced? Go to you first, Mike.
Well, in Southern Baptist life, it's the 3 B's. It's behinds, budgets, and buildings.
Yeah.
I
thought it was be brief, brother. Brief.
Yeah, that's it. That's the other one. But
sorry.
That does give you a quick snapshot, kind of like taking your blood pressure.
Yeah.
But if in Southern Baptist life, that became the whole drive. What do I have to do? So is
that why membership is so important?
That's right. So anytime you're introduced, church has so many members, and they just completed this building, preaching stuff. That became almost what you put on your business card. To the point that that people would get baptized again and again and again, and you would count every one of those baptisms as
They did.
So and they became a way of manipulating to achieve that goal, and everybody knew the game with that. My dad was in local politics, and Dad always told me never confuse the guy who says he has the power and the guy who has the power. They're never the same guy. And so he taught me how to work a room and find out who was in that room, who was making the decision.
Can we take a time out for a second? You gave all this influence about going into ministry, about your dad studying the Bible on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Your dad was in local politics?
Yeah.
Don't you wonder how much of that came to bear on your ministry experience being able to do?
I tell people all the time, growing up with my dad
That's beautiful.
was the best seminary that I could go to.
Because nobody teaches you how to do politics, and that's half of
Well.
what ministry is.
But
There's plenty of teachers out there.
he would.
That's so cool.
Yeah, he would tell me that, and what you find out when you lead a little congregation, they say, "Well, I feel so. You have to make everybody happy." No, you don't. There's about 10 people you have to make happy.
Yeah.
And those 10 people are the chiefs of the various tribes in your congregation. And what you find out is, if you're going to do anything, you have to have coffee with those chiefs before you ever say anything publicly. And if they give you the thumbs up, you're good. If they don't, then you better rethink it, because they'll blow you up on the church floor. So you drink, and people say, "What's your leadership style?" I drink a lot of coffee till people come up with my idea.
I used to call it leading by leaking.
Yeah, that's it.
That you
There
say
you go.
with this guy, hey,
There you go.
Yeah.
should we build a building?
Right.
Or
Yeah, I need
should
your
we go
help
into
here.
debt? Or what about a new campus?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just see how people respond.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
I
Drucker
can't figure out how to solve this.
Yeah.
I keep coming up to this. I'm looking at this, looked at this.
Drucker said the reason most people complain was because you never asked them before you made the decision.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And just
And
what do you think?
what we learned in putting teams, committees, the building committee.
Oh, committees.
We
Oh.
we always made sure that there was always somebody from those different tribes
Yeah.
on that team.
Yeah.
So if I'm in the congregation and I say, okay, I heard what Mike said, but Tim's my friend. Tim knows.
Yeah.
So I'll find Tim
Yes.
after this meeting's over, and Tim will tell me.
So this really digresses from where I wanted to go, but when you put
But you
children
should have known
ministry,
you were never
student
going to be-
ministry. I got a lot of questions. Student ministries, building committee, singles, yard, worship committee, choir people. You put them on a committee, you're going to have 18 doors, 2 drivers, 4 sets of brakes. Right? You've seen those old cartoons.
Yeah.
So there's this tension of leadership makes decisions and guides and encourages people toward the right goals and objectives versus groupthink and getting a lot of people to weigh in. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Explain it to
I'm
me, preacher.
saying that the aha for me was finding out that I was trained. The pastor goes off to the mountaintop, gets the vision, comes down, and tells the church. What I discovered was God put a vision in that church when that church was born, just like He does in every child. Your role as pastor, or I felt my role as pastor, is not to bring the vision, but to tease out what God has already put in there. The midwife, Shipra and Pua, created a safe place for the dream to be born and wouldn't let a pagan king define the future of God's people. My role at Brentwood was, what are you dreaming? When in that moment before you fall asleep at night and you say, I wish our church would. What is God telling you? All the cool things that happen in our church happen because of lay people, not because of me. My input in a lot of meetings was, well, that's a good idea.
Well, back to your image, I do
That's
think that
gold.
that's probably, unfortunately, more true than not in our age group model, that the pastor had the vision,
That's right,
he went
yeah.
to the mountaintop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Went to the seminar.
yeah, better said. That's the mountaintop, right? They're in resorts usually. Yeah. I want to go to that one.
Churches hate when the pastor goes to a seminar. Golly, this is going to be awful when he gets
on
back.
a sabbatical. Come back. You
Go
got an
right, yeah.
idea. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if I'm grassroots up, I got a lot of opinions and ideas and dreams. How do I prioritize those, or how do I know that's what the Lord wants for that particular church?
I love your illustration. I mean, that's train up a child in the way
Yeah,
they should go,
that's right, yeah.
That whole scripture doesn't mean you force the child to go this way. It means you're teasing the thing up the vine. And the one thing I would not let go of was reaching the lost for us. And that was who they naturally wanted to be. And so that was the thing, finding the prodigal and bringing him home. That was the thing. The way we went about it ebbed and flowed, obviously. Sometimes we'd go to a seminar. Sometimes we'd do our own things for our own people in our own way. But that was the thing. And I mean, we ended up being, as I look back on it now, we ended up being a much different church than I would have ever dreamed we were going to be. Because we were, I mean, there's something about Southside Chicago. There's something about who those people are and how to reach them, and and for me that was 70% ex-Catholic. Okay, and I'm from, like I told you, I'm from Oklahoma. There's like, I thought the Hail Mary was a football play. That's all I knew about Catholicism, and so I had to learn all of that, and I had to learn how to stop ticking off grandma, who finds out that something's going on, and I had to figure out how to mold them, because they wanted to know Jesus, but not offend them at the same time, and how to do all those kinds of things. So that was a big part of it. I was still exerting the leadership, but I had to tease it out, and it turned out being something that was great for me. Now, answer your question about the leadership thing. One of the things I hit on pretty early on was that if I was going to have any leaders, I was going to have to mentor them. I was going to have to create them.
Grow them up.
So very early on, I started doing a mentorship group for, a group of leaders every year. And it was actually John Maxwell's Joshua's Men program way back in the day that I kind of took and tweaked. And I can tell you that within the last probably 20 years, every elder, every lay leader at the executive level that's making a decision came out of those groups. So by the time they came in there, we had already dreamed and planned and prayed, and they were part of the vision already. Yeah.
The two tests for me were, everybody come with an idea. Hey, preacher, our church needs to, and I would look at them and go, write the plan out and get it back to me. And they would go, well, I'm you're the pastor. No, God didn't give me this. He gave it to you. And he gave it to you because he wants to work within the uniqueness of who you are. And I'm eager to see how God's going to work. And I'll work with you, but I'm not going to do it. In Brentwood, if a lay person was not the champion, it would not fly. 9 times out of 10, maybe even more than that, 99 out of 100, people wouldn't come back.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to follow up.
Yeah, they didn't come
the number
back.
of people that have a wonderful plan for your life.
Yeah. And you talk about, well, what do you do with other leaders? I had a lot of advisors. I didn't have many leaders.
That's probably true in most churches.
I had a lot of people who wanted to tell me how to
Strong
make
recommendations.
Yeah, strong recommendation. But the guys who came back, they're the ones who we ended up with the deaf ministry in our church.
And premier ministry.
Yeah.
Now, Kairos.
Yeah, it came from a group of young adults.
Yeah.
So that wasn't your book heading away saying, I want to do this.
No.
Interesting.
No, it was. I'd been there long enough. These kids are grown up now. They said, "Hey, we want to do this. We want you to help us."
Okay.
And I said, "Well, yeah, I'll help you get it started. I can't do it. Famous last words.
Yeah.
I'm much too busy to do this."
Yeah.
and then you end up doing it 11 years.
Yep.
So
I was there.
yeah,
My daughter
I
went
loved
to
it.
Belmont,
I
and
loved it.
she went to Kairos.
Hannah visited once or twice.
Yeah, my leaders told me, said, "You're doing too much. You need to give up something." I said, "Okay, I'll give up Sunday morning."
Yeah, right.
It's a lot more fun on Tuesday nights.
A lot more fun on
Tuesday
Tuesday
nights,
night. But
Well, that's all the time we have today. But come back next week, and we'll continue this ambling conversation with Mike Glenn and Tim Harlow. Until then, God bless. And again, please drop us a note, send us an email. Any way you want to contact us, we'd love to hear from you.